We have a certain way of thinking about innovation, but they approach it in a different manner. And this is somewhat what I discovered doing my research. These are companies that proactively transform themselves into major innovation, powerhouses.
It's not that they're optimized for stability, it's that they operate somewhere in the middle space with both, with an innovation capability and an execution capability. But I have long believed that organizations could optimize for steady state, and they could build everything to sustain that steady state, and they put all the systems in place and all the processes and all the everything. We create a company that is designed to do something nobody has ever done before. It's like it's an engine, it's a practice, it's a habit.
By stimulating and allowing people to use this other part of their brain, develop it and train it, you might actually breeding the next big innovator in the company. Who knows?
There is no growth in comfort and no comfort in growth. Yet the big leaps are how careers are made and how businesses excel. So how do you master not knowing it all or feeling like an imposter? How do you have the conversations that lead to trust and, of course, excellence? How do you take charge of the things that you can control? How do you thrive outside your comfort zone? That's what this podcast is about. I'm your host, Wanda Wallace, and it's time to get out of your comfort zone. Well, welcome to the conversation. Now, we're going to talk about innovation today, and you may believe that it's only the rare, unique individuals like, let's say, Steve Jobs or Elon Musk that can innovate. And you may believe that only the radical, industry-changing, major new disruptions count as innovation, but neither are really true. In fact, some of the best innovations happening in companies are happening at small levels. Now, there's certainly radical innovations and certainly big major changes, but it's these small incremental ones that we see the biggest gain with. And by the way, anybody can innovate. How, you may be asking? That's what we're talking about today. How do you encourage innovation on your team? What's your role in doing that? And what is it that the best companies are doing to build a culture of innovation? So my guest today is well suited to talk about this. It's Ben Bensaou, who's a professor of technology management and professor of Asian business and comparative management at INSEAD in France. Ben has served as Dean of Executive Education at INSEAD, and he's been a visiting professor or senior fellow or something at many of the major schools, including Harvard Business School, Wharton School of Management at Pennsylvania, and the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley. Ben's research and teaching have all focused on how do you create innovative capabilities and competencies, the blue ocean strategy and value innovation and the rollout across the organization, about how to build social capital within firms, about new forms of organization, particularly networked organizations, and about the impact of digital technologies on innovation, just to name a few. He's widely published in the academic world and in the popular press. The book we're talking about today is Built to Innovate, Essential Practices to Wire Innovation into Your Company's DNA. And I might just add, it's not that just Ben has a degree, a PhD in management from MIT, but he also has a master's of management science from Tokyo, from, I won't even try to pronounce the university there. He's got a civil engineering degree. He's got a mechanical engineering degree and a bunch of other things, just to put a point on the purpose. So Ben, welcome to the conversation.
Well, good. I suppose it's good morning for you, Wanda, or is it, are you in London?
I'm in New York today, so it is good morning for me and good afternoon for you in France.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
I suppose I should ask why all of those degrees.
Oh, these are accidents of life. These are accidents of life. This is another conversation, but actually the main one was the engineering, and it was a kind of a dual engineering degree, and then actually willing to go to the US. Just by accident, I ended up in Japan. And this is where the whole research journey started. Absolutely.
I can see that.
And then it was just a logical thing. I mean, it was just the way that life happens, you know. I mean, you meet somebody, you fall in love with the country, with the people, and that's how.
Yeah, so you keep going. I love that, the accidents of life. I can see, though, knowing that now about you, the way that engineering thinking training comes into some of your work in terms of systematizing, turning it into an organizational process, and so on. Okay, why innovation? What's your fascination with innovation?
I think you put the finger on it. It all started I mean, actually, you spot on. It kind of all started with kind of my engineering training. And at the time when I went to Japan, it was kind of by accident, but it was primarily to try to discover what the Japanese were doing in my field at the time. So that's how I ended up in Japan, with the desire to study some sort of a science or engineering. And actually, along the way, I discovered that Japanese firms were formidable economic, kind of powers, and that's how I became intrigued and actually shifted from engineering to management, and started to work on. It was kind of just a master's, so we were studying some research on what made Japanese firms so successful. Then, of course, to deepen that, I went to the US, joined MIT Sloan School, and my research initially was on the manufacturing companies in Japan. So it was kind of technical and looking at how Japanese plants were working so well, how they developed these relationships, with their suppliers. And then when I started to actually teach and share this with Western managers in Europe and the US, people were very intrigued, and they were willing to learn about how the Japanese succeeded, but they were always asking the same question: why is it that they're not so good at innovation? And this is how I kind of shifted my interest and started to look at how is it that Japanese firms don't innovate that much? I mean, and this is where the finding was in the definition that we have of innovation. This is the crux of the conversation, is that we have a certain way of thinking about innovation, but they approach it in a different manner. And this is somewhat what I discovered doing my research.
From what little I know of Japanese firms, I see a meticulous, constantly steady improvement. Little bit by little bit by little bit. They work with their suppliers, from what I understand, to do that steadily, steadily, steadily. And we might look from the outside and say that's not innovation. But you add that up over the course of years, and suddenly they are ahead in manufacturing, for example.
Right.
Not necessarily a breakthrough. All right, let me test a hypothesis with you, because I have long believed, and you're going to tell me I'm wrong, but I have long believed that organizations could optimize for steady state, and they could build everything to sustain that steady state, and they put all the systems in place and all the processes and all the everything, and innovation in that case would be a very incremental innovation. Or they could optimize for disruption, and in which case it's a very chaotic company, and the manufacturing is not very reliable, and so on and so on. But that it's hard to get companies who do both. What's your view? Am I right or am I wrong?
No, this is an interesting point of view, and in a sense, I would almost categorize that the research I did found not necessarily people doing both, but some sort of a hybrid model in between. So as you might have gathered, it's about, I would say, about 20 years that since I shifted into looking at innovation, and I've spent about all that time investigating about 100 firms deeply around the world, in public sector, private sector, from small to large conglomerates and all that. And what is interesting is that I came across some quite fascinating companies. These are companies that proactively transform themselves into major innovation, powerhouses. And when I looked at these companies, what I found is that many of them were old, established companies operating in very traditional firms. These were not the disruptors that we think about. And so what I found is that it's interesting the way you put it, Wanda, because in fact, we had been caught into this kind of two polar views of innovation. I mean, some people would argue that Japanese way of doing it is not innovation, but cumulatively it ends up being kind of innovative in the product level. And then we have the disruptive. And actually, I like the way you say that you have to optimize for disruption. I don't know. You optimize for disruption or destruction. But what I found is that there were firms that were able, and I'll give you a couple examples, that were able to actually approach innovation in a systematic, continuous, methodical manner. So just to give you a couple examples to frame the conversation and to tell you what companies I'm talking about. So let me start with maybe Fiskars. This is a 400-year-old company. 400-year-old company. It's a manufacturing company based in Finland. I think they're well known for their iconic orange scissors. So they make cutting tools, tableware, and also they make outdoor equipment like for gardening and other purposes. And for me, this is a very good example of an old company. We agree on that. That has been able to enter an entirely new industry thanks to their very methodical and continuous and systematic approach to innovation. They did not disrupt their industry or the other industry, but they entered an entirely new industry. So the example I can point out to you is the way they kind of entered one of these industries. So they have this home gardening kind of business, tools for home gardening. And to better understand the needs of their customers, they conducted, they were using design thinking as a matter of fact. They were trying to understand the job to be done by their home gardening customers. So they conducted an in-depth ethnographic study looking at the experience, the journey of home gardening. So they look at what happens before, during, and after people use their Fiskar tools. And through this research, they made a significant discovery. They found out that watering was an essential task, was an integral task of the gardening experience for their customers. And at the same time, they realized that they had the technology and the design capabilities to actually develop a watering solution, a highly differentiated watering solution that was, that none of the existing players in the hose business could come up with. So, just to tell you what they came up with is that instead of opting for the conventional, wall-mounted rack to store your hose, they developed an all-in-one, independent kind of all-in-one device, which they call the water wheel. So it's like a carry-on luggage. It's fitted with wheels. You have your hose rolled around, and it's fitted with all sorts of accessories. So this product, you understand, they were not in the hose or watering business. They entered it after doing this very systematic search in trying to understand what their customers were dealing with. And this product opened up a completely new product line for them. And it won a lot of awards. It became a very profitable, addition to their product lineup. And as a matter of fact, I have quite a few other examples of this very systematic approach to, innovation. So this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. These are the kind of companies I'm talking about.
Okay, so basic, standard, traditional, not hardline, product categories like gardening tools or scissors in home crafts and so on, which is where I know the brand the best, does a study of their consumers and realize that there's an unmet need that they can do something about, and they're skilled and capable, and they get on with doing it. All right, now, I can name all sorts of companies, Ben, where someone inside the company has a similar insight and it never gets anywhere. So what is it that's happening in that company that allows them to take this idea and do something with it, as opposed to yeah, it won't work, which is what happens
Right,
more often than
right.
not.
So this is the essence of the question, of course. And I just gave you an example, but I'll try to give you other examples of companies that have done similar things. But let me focus on the mechanism. So I think what is really what I found in common, if you will, what I found in common is in all of these firms, and I have quite a few of them featured in the book. What they have in common is that when I try to look at how they operate, if I were kind of trying to open the hood, I would see that they're actually operating with not with one engine, but two engines. So one engine is, it's everybody knows about it. It's what I could call the execution engine. So the execution engine is focused on implementing, executing today's strategy. So the innovating, I call it the innovating engine. The innovating engine is instead focused on developing the strategy for tomorrow. Like you say, developing and testing products, processes, services for the future. So what is important is that these organizations, these companies I'm talking about, they actually create these two engines. And let's focus on the innovating engine, because this is the new part. So the innovating engine is something that is totally, it's a dedicated, fully legitimized, fully protected time and space where every employee in the organization is given permission to innovate, is encouraged and supported to look for new ideas that create space. So this is the big difference for me, is that this innovating engine or innovating space is operating in parallel with the execution engine, which means that every employee is not only given permission, but is encouraged to engage in some form, and we can talk about what form it can take, some form of innovating activity as part of their job, as part of their job. And this is what is central. So now, to make this work, and I'm maybe kind of pointing to some maybe potential follow-up question, is that what makes this engine work is that everyone in the organization has a contribution to make to build and maintain this innovating engine. So frontline, of course, as you can suspect, are generating a lot of these ideas. Middle managers play a key role, and senior leaders also play a key role. But that's what I would say. Yeah.
Great. So, in effect, what you're saying is that it's not that they're optimized for destruction or disruption. I like your twist on that word. And it's not that they're optimized for stability. It's that they operate somewhere in the middle space with both, with an innovation capability and an execution capability. And they empower, enable, facilitate everybody to participate in the innovation in some form or another. All right. How, Ben? How? Go ahead.
Okay, so let me come back. I don't want to kind of mislead people about this pun about disruption and this destruction. I mean, one does not preclude the other. What these organizations do is that, let's be honest. Disruption, genius-led innovation is very hard. Not every company can be a Tesla or Amazon or Apple, right? So it is very hard. That's why I decided to kind of change the way we think about innovation. So what I'm saying is that, of course, if you have geniuses, if you have ideas that can disrupt your business or another business, please go ahead. But what I'm trying to say is that what these organizations have done, at least, is that they developed an organization to tap into and leverage the capabilities of the whole organization. And they did this. What is the big difference here? It's not about senior leaders going around saying innovation is important, we want you to innovate and all that. They have created an organization. So I mean, you're talking about the how. Let me give another example, because this innovating engine, as a matter of fact, and this is what the book is about, is try to codify what it is. So it's like, we always talk about organizations. We say they have a structure, governance structure, they have processes, and they have a culture. So let me highlight, because the intriguing one is the structure. Huh? So they have a very formal governance structure. Let me take a good example. Is a company is Bayer. Bayer, the global life science and pharmaceutical company based in Germany. So now Bayer, of course, is well known for its fantastic, scientific achievements coming out of its R&D. However, in 2014, the board decided to create an additional organization to tap into these capabilities that are lying around the company. So what did they do? First, they made the whole board responsible for innovation. So they started with one member who was kind of the chief innovation, and then they realized that they needed the whole board. Then they selected 80 senior executives covering all country regions and all global functions to support the board as innovation ambassadors. And these ambassadors, they spend most of their time advocating for innovation. I mean, they spend their time with middle managers. This is key. Advocating for innovation, supporting them, training them in innovation, sponsoring some projects. Then Bayer trained and certified 1,000 innovation coaches who were activated across the organization. And of course, this innovation, and by the way, I saw very similar kind of central unit of innovation experts and internal consultants at BASF, for instance. They call it Perspective. At Samsung, they call it the Value Innovation Program Center. I saw this also at Allianz. In insurance, they call it I2S. And then another interesting structural, we're talking about structure, things you can see, tasks and roles and responsibilities. They created WeSolve. WeSolve is a digital platform where any employee can, across Bayer, can submit submit a problem that they're dealing with, inviting ideas and suggestions from across the organization. Now, they showed me some of the statistics. 40,000 people have participated in WeSolve, knowing that, the platform, when I saw it, it was in English, and they have only 50,000 people who speak English across the organization. But let me tell you the most surprising. This is where they got a surprise. They found out that two-thirds of the best ideas that was proposed on WeSolve came from a function or a division within the organization different from the one where the problem was posed in the first place. So you can see how they were able to leverage the capabilities of everyone across the organization. Now, you see, as long as we keep the definition as and this is, in my view, this is what I'm trying to add, is that if we always are obsessed with disruption, then you don't pay attention to these things. But all of these innovations accumulate, they create value for Bayer, they create value for their customers. I mean, it's not that Bayer has disrupted the pharmaceutical industry, but guess what? I haven't done the numbers, but I'm sure that a major part of the economy is driven by these innovations. But of course, we pay attention we glorify the disruptions, which is fair, but it's not for everybody.
Well, I still think, I think there are big disruptions and small disruptions as well. And I would say your Fiskar example of recognizing the watering system is a disruption because it's recognizing an unmet need that they can do something about. That's a disruptor. It's a change. But this willingness to look at small innovations in the way that Bayer has done, I suspect sets them up to hear the signal about a big disruption when it comes through, as opposed to we create a company that is designed to do something nobody has ever done before, like Tesla or SpaceX or whatever one you want to describe at the moment. but it's like it's an engine, it's a practice, it's a habit.
Absolutely, absolutely. I cannot agree with you more, and I'm repeating this every day. I mean, again, I don't mean to be facetious, but I think that it's just like the organization is overlooking this capability that exists. I mean, we think that innovation is coming from senior leaders or specialists in R&D and all the other people. In fact, when I do the research and I interview people at the front line and report back to the senior leaders, they're amazed. I tell them, your people are so creative, they're so innovative, they have so many ideas, but we don't take this seriously. And actually, we end up killing the ideas. So not only I agree with you that you might actually, through the feedback and the information that comes from the front line. By the way, the front line is on a daily basis facing customers and what I call non-customers. So you get all of these weak signals, but more importantly, by stimulating and allowing people to use this other part of their brain and allow them to actually, develop it and train it, you might actually breeding the next, big innovator in the company. Who knows? Actually, I have a great story. I just finished a case on one of the companies that is featured in the book. And I interviewed people, and they were telling me they have now established a program within the company where anybody in the company can apply to a program. It's called Almost Ready to Fly, RARF. And you submit a project of an idea of a startup. And the startup may have nothing to do with the business of the company. And then if you're selected, you're given a few weeks and some training to actually develop the idea. And if you can actually go out there and sell the idea, the company will actually provide, I forgot what was the number, but they provide seed funding, and then they will give you, the resources. You're housed in the facilities of the company. So, and I interviewed a lady who was one of the key engineers who just, came up with an idea because she was dealing with the problem with her own kids. This is they call the company is called Kidu, Kidu. So it's an Uber for kids, because in this country, this is in Turkey, they have problems, with for the kids. So they created this service where parents could have this Uber system that would go pick up their kids and bring them back safely. And this lady, she was on the path to become one of the top leaders in the company. And then when she saw this opportunity, she said, I want to become an entrepreneur. And by the way, she has a guarantee that if the startup doesn't work, she can come back to her job and her company. And you can imagine now, I think what is interesting is not so, it is, of course, it would be great if the startup works and if she has a great career, but it is the signal it is sending to the rest of the organization. And now, even in the marketplace, the company is recognized as a company that supports innovation. So you'll have, some of the top people who come and say, instead of quitting and going to start a startup, I can actually do it with the company supporting me. So you're totally right. You're totally right. I think by opening the gates and allowing people whom you typically think, oh, why should we care? They just have a job to execute, but there's so much potential, and they can get so many of the weak signals in the market. They can actually help the company work on a disruption.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that this program, Almost Ready to Fly, is a great recruiting technique for younger people. I can see that even the ones that fail in their entrepreneurial effort, if the company is smart, there is something learned, and that individual is a better leader and a better manager as a result of having done that. I can see all sorts of positives here.
I cannot believe you must have read the case already. When I interviewed the lady just a couple of weeks ago, I was asking her about the other people who came to the training with her, and she said some people actually they had the idea of the startup, it failed. They came back to their job, and she said they all got promoted.
Of course.
They all got promoted.
Because now you understand what it means to be an owner. Now you understand how hard it is to build a culture. Now you understand something about the team. You understand something about the marketplace. Are you kidding? That's the best training you could get in many ways. All right. Okay. So let's go back to something you teased a few minutes ago, which was middle managers. And, I like middle managers, I have to confess, and we give them a hard time all the time, but they have one of the hardest jobs in the entire universe.
Absolutely.
They are the holder of the reins of the execution engine, because if they don't control those reins tightly, cost, productivity, quality go out the door. That is their job. At the same time, they're having to answer up. At the same time, they're having to lead a different generation in a different way than they were led. And at the same time, we want them to drive this innovation. And so I find they're often, I don't want to say roadblock, that's unfair to them. Their competing demands on their attention make it hard for them to be comfortable with spending time on something unknown. How do we work with middle managers? What's your advice?
I think you're spot on, and this is interesting because for me, the most surprising finding in the research was actually around the middle managers. I found that actually middle managers are pivotal to innovation. Without them, innovation does not happen. Now, as you said, they're difficult bound because they are fundamentally, like you say, responsible for execution. They're not trained in innovation. They have to deliver. But yet, if you think about enabling or empowering the front line in looking for new ideas, I should tell you about my distinction between innovation and innovating, because I think it might clarify things for people. They have a big advantage, is that in terms of connecting ideas, innovators, and resources, they are at the right level of elevation within the organization. And the big issue for them is that if some people in their team come and say, "Oh, we have a great idea, we want to work on that," they cannot help. So you remember these central units that I found. I told you about Bayer, BASF, all the things. Quite a few of these organizations, they start with a big or small unit where they train these coaches. Then these coaches very often are go back to their functions, and they become the local coach in innovation. So whenever a middle manager has a team that has a nice idea to work on, they cannot take care of it themselves. So they can call upon this. So they need support. What I'm saying is that it's not that middle managers are not supporting innovation, but given their resources, given their incentive system as well, they cannot sacrifice some resources because they have to deliver. So by providing them with this initially local structure, and by the fact that this innovating engine is formally structured, they have a place to go. So very often when I ask people, if you had an idea, what would you do? Where would you go? So frontline people as well as middle managers, they don't know where to get help. So the fact that you create help, and then the fact that you also create some sort of a positive, how would I say, not an incentive, but kind of emulation for senior middle managers is also very helpful. Let me tell you, just as an example, what Allianz, actually the insurance company in Germany, it's Allianz UK. What they did is that very simple. They created a league table of the most innovative operations within the market. So you can imagine that no middle manager wants to be on the bottom of the table, provided they get supported. So I mean, I made a pun out of it in the class. Is that the expression again? The traditional kind of narrative about innovation is that don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. So for me, in a sense, if you give permission to people to innovate, there's no need for them to ask for permission. But separate from that, what I tell middle managers is allow or give permission to your people to innovate and make others jealous, make other middle managers jealous. So if you don't mind, I just want to make this distinction because it clarifies things, because we keep using the word innovation. As a matter of fact, I found talking to people about innovation around the world is that at least for people who have a grammatical structure where there's a distinction between innovation and the verb. So I found in many of the countries that have this kind of linguistic structure, that the word innovation as a noun is very intimidating. It creates a sense of anxiety and stress, in particular for the frontline people. And I can tell you, teaching innovation in class, many people, when they come to innovation training, they assume that their boss expects them to, come up with the next breakthrough kind of product, or to uncover a new market. And you see, the pressure is on, and they hate it. So having discovered, again, by accident, lots of things happen by accident. Having discovered about this common kind of, reaction, I avoid using the word innovation when I teach. Instead, I refer to innovating, or simply I use the verb to innovate. We're not here to learn about innovation, we're learning about how to innovate. And then immediately I can see the pressure goes off, because people understand that innovating, or the verb to innovate, refer to a process, to an action, to an activity, to a behavior, a set of behaviors that can be learned and practiced, if you will. And for me, just by using the verb instead of the noun, which is very stressful, gives permission to people to try their hand. To again, as I always say, it's like very few people are geniuses who can kind of come up with a breakthrough insight on command. But learning, getting involved in some innovating activity, learning how to innovate is something that can be, it can be taught, it can be supported by tools and structured processes. So that's the big distinction. So
I like that. It makes a big difference to me, Ben. Makes a lot of sense.
Let me give you the metaphor that people can relate to. So if innovation is a tip of the iceberg, the impressive peak, rising above the water level, then innovating represents all the activities that happen under the water level. And this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about building that innovating capability within the organization, and that can lead, if you're lucky, to some innovation, an outcome, a result,
Okay. All right, so let's talk then. I like that distinction. That makes a lot of sense to me. And what we want to do is engage in the activities and hope for a good outcome. And that makes a lot more sense. So talk to me about the kind of activities that people, the processes, the behaviors that people can do to encourage innovating.
So encourage innovating. I think I kind of a little bit touched on the middle managers. They have a very important role, which is to give. People underestimate the notion of simply giving permission, giving permission, allowing people, and not just kind of saying it, but actually creating some time, some space, some process, some system by which people can engage in innovating activities, connecting people. The front line, I usually say that their challenge is because this is where they are the ones who are in the best place to actually generate new ideas, and they are the ones who are facing customers and non-customers on a daily basis. So they need to learn. They need to develop some new skills, which again, the idea here is that these skills can be taught, they can be trained, they can be supported by tools. They need to learn how to listen to the voice of the customer. This is well known. I mean, there are a lot of processes already engaged in that. There's something I like to call, they need to learn to listen to the silence of the customer. And the silence of the customer is what the customers don't necessarily tell you. They don't tell you either because they don't know of the problem or the need, or they know about it, but they don't tell you because they don't think that you're the ones who should fix that problem for them. I have a very interesting example of we discovered how the lime scale filter on a kettle, how it was developed by Philips. And again, you will see the connection here. So they were trying to develop a new design of a kettle to re-enter the UK market where they had kind of problems with market share. And again, it's very interesting because when we did the research, it also happened purely by accident. The senior leader at one day woke up. Of course, not everybody does that, but woke up and said, does anyone know? Has anyone seen a real customer use our kettles? And these were like, all male engineers working out of blueprints. So he said, he sent everybody in the team to live with a family for a few days. And it didn't take long for everybody to start to call him back, screaming, saying, why has never anybody tell us about these problems? And so he said, what problem? So people had discovered that when people were preparing for the tea, when they were pouring the boiling water, there was a little kind of coat of limescale. There was a lot of calcium in the region. So then they turned back to the customer. Why didn't you tell us about this? So they went back and forth. You didn't tell us. But then the customer said something very interesting. They said, well, if we were to complain about the limescale problem, we would not talk to the kettle manufacturer, we would complain to the water authorities. And once Philips discovered this limescale problem, it took the engineers a few days to design the first, limescale filter. I mean, it's fitted on all kettles now. But this is what I call listening to the silence of the customer, because the customer didn't tell them about the water problem because they don't think it's so. I mean, and what I tell people in class, if you solve a problem for your customer, a problem that they don't think it's your job to fix it for them, then you have fans.
Then you got it. Then you're in good shape. It makes me want to go and buy a Philips kettle.
Oh, and by the way, there's a third element. I said silence of the voice of the customer, which means basically learning how to listen with empathy. And this is something that supply side doesn't know how to do. People, even when they go on, trying to be customer focused, they keep talking. They use their own language. They're not listening with empathy to their customer. Then the second one is the silence of the customer. And there's a big part of detecting weak signals in the market is to talk to non-customers. Customers in other industries, customers, across the whole value. Your customers if you're in B2B, regulators. I mean, there's a whole ecosystem that people ignore when they're looking for innovation because they're so obsessed with their direct customers.
Right. I remember for one of my clients years ago in the automotive industry, we had all the executives as part of this activity go and take a ride for a couple of hours with somebody who drove a competitor's car and loved it, right? There's an example, and you walk away going, oh, wow, we've got a long ways to go here in terms of getting what our people want.
Let me add the third component here. I talked about middle managers, how they contribute to this innovating behavior, frontline, but the senior leaders also have a very important role to play. And then in the book, I call this the reframing component, because they have to reframe the organization. So reframing is about challenging the existing kind of, beliefs and assumptions about the business, about the identity of the company, about the customers and their needs. And the senior leaders, well, of course, we agree they have to put innovation at the center, right? They are the ones who have to first give permission, but they have to help to reframe the organization. I mean, broaden or redirect the mission and the purpose of the organization. So let me give you an example. I'm coming back to that example of the, I don't know. No. It's the Turkish. I mean, the ARF company. So they were that company. They are they make fabric that is used to reinforce tires. So their clients are the Goodyears of this world, the Michelins of this world. So they just traditionally made this fabric, and then one day, I mean, I could go through the long story, but one day the CEO realized that they're very good at reinforcing materials. So he actually reframed the purpose of the company. He actually changed the name of the logo of the company. He called it the Reinforcer. And then he went on a big kind of internal, communication campaign telling people, we're not, because they were a commodity player, we're not just reinforcing, making fabric for reinforcing tires. We are the reinforcer. We provide reinforcing solution to any company, any industry that needs reinforcing. And now they provide, composite material to to the electronics industry, to the construction industry, and the aerospace industry. They are on SpaceX. They provide reinforcing material on SpaceX. So what he did, he kind of reframed, if you will, So he enlarged the frame of the mission of the company, giving permission to everyone to look for new ideas, not only in the small, narrow frame of making fabric for tires, but anything that we can reinforce in the world. Please bring me those ideas and let's work on it.
So what was the spark for him to do this reframing? Do you know the answer to that?
Oh, for him, that's a very good question. Actually, I should be meeting him again soon. Actually, this is somebody I trained in innovation in 2006. Well, I think I could. I mean, actually, no, I think I know. So actually, I have to say that I trained him. He was a very reluctant student. I mean, I trained him. He was an executive. This was an executive. It was a consulting job. He was a very reluctant people. He was an engineer. He didn't think that we could innovate and all that stuff. But then there was this particular exercise, this particular set of tools, where I actually asked people to systematically look at all of their adjacent businesses and look at, so what are other businesses where your core competencies could be stretched into? And I think this is this kind of formal exercise where he realized that actually they could take their core capability. And it's not like Fiskars getting in the watering business. I mean, this was actually simply providing reinforcing solutions but of course, in between, to be honest, I mean, he had developed almost from scratch the R&D capability of the company. So he had also some feeder, if you will. But strategically, it came from him realizing that instead of focusing on competing against the other people in their own business, he could look at non-customers, and there are very systematic ways to look at all this non-customer space around.
Right. Okay, I like that one. All right, Ben, I know that we could keep talking for hours, but this has been a good teaser on innovation. This has been a good teaser. I think the thing that I am walking away most wanting to hang on to is this notion that while all the companies that listen and tune in are certainly driving an execution engine, that they can, alongside that, drive an innovation engine. And that doing that is thinking about how you give permission to people to have an idea, to bring that idea forward, and then have people have a place to take it for support. So for some analysis, for some depth, for some presentation, for some coaching, for whatever it takes to get that idea to a shape where someone else might go, oh, I get it. And it's that in my experience, it's that coaching capability that just doesn't exist in organizations. We expect it to be fully baked, and it doesn't happen.
You're making a very important point, and actually you said a key word that was very important earlier. What I tell people when they kind of get intrigued by that, I said, you're talking about building a capability, so don't be greedy. This is not something that is going to happen in 3 months or through so you have to build a habit. Like you said, you used the word habit, and I think it cannot be more important than that. And to build an organizational habit is a long,
It's a long journey.
Long journey. You have to be consistent, perseverant. Yeah. And people don't necessarily have the patience for this. Yeah.
Yeah, and we think that a campaign of Everybody Innovate is going to do the idea, and it isn't. It needs some structure and some supports, and I think that's what's most fascinating about your work. All right, my guest today is Ben Bensaou. The book that we have been talking about is Built to Innovate, Essential Practices to Wire Innovation into Your Company's DNA. I don't think it could be said better. Ben, what a great conversation. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Wanda. I loved it.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you.
All
Thank you
right.
very much. Bye-bye.